Hi all. I'd like to thank Verd and the guys from Gentleman for having me to present this introduction to event-based analytics. A little about me. My name is Avi Lior. I've been working on online B2C products for many years, from early stage startups to full-scale popular apps. In recent years, I've been working more and more with event-based analytics, and I will hope that by the end of this presentation, you'll see why. So I made a few notes to myself towards this presentation. First of all, I will try throughout this presentation, I'll try to avoid technical definitions and use real examples instead. Feel free to ping me if I happen to be using a term that you're not familiar with. I'll be using a startup, which I'm working with right now, with their permission, of course, in order to demonstrate exactly the work process that we're doing in order to assimilate the event-based analytics platform. So I hope this would also give some volume to the examples that I'm giving. And I will be using also Amplitude's demo environment. Amplitude is a leading event-based analytics platform, but it is definitely not the only one. So we have a Mixpanel, we have a HIP, and we have a few more. And the principles which I will demonstrate with Amplitude apply to these platforms as well. Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses, but in an introduction presentation, I think it's good enough. So let's start. So the first thing, first of all, we see that we're almost halfway through. So I'll start by introducing Relo Planner. Relo Planner is a startup with which I'm working now. We'll go over their status right now. They went into beta recently, and we'll check their analytics requirements. We'll then try to explain why we're using event-based analytics and why we chose it. We'll give examples, we'll give more examples. We'll then go over the infrastructure of the system, which would be pretty generic, meaning I'm sure you will be able to make the leap and apply the same to whichever system that you want, and see how the event-based analytics fits in with this infrastructure. And last, if we have time, we'll dig a little deeper into a specific area, which is marketing automation, which I think demonstrates the full power of using event-based analytics. So let's continue. Relo Planner is what you're seeing here. It's a platform that creates complete personal relocation. Actually, if you want to relocate from your country to another country, you go to the site. Right now, it's available in web only. Soon, there will be a mobile app as well. You define who your family is, what your pets are, whichever requirements that you have, and it helps you plan your relocation to the other place. It's a great app. I also helped them during the QA and product definition stages. And did I mention that it's using AI? If I didn't, it's using a lot of AI, like many things in this presentation. Feel free to check them out and join the beta. They're pretty cool. So let's have a look at the Relo Planner's analytics requirements. So as a bootstrap startup, Relo Planner had to prioritize their analytics requirements. And they came to these 4 sections, more or less. One of them is to track marketing acquisition performance, see what the users from each source are coming from and what they're doing. So I'll throw some numbers to those of you that aren't fully familiar with the marketing terminology. Let's say that I'm spending $500 on a Google campaign. This specific campaign brought me 1,000 clicks, 100 registrations, and 20 unique purchases. Okay, and this is what we're doing in the marketing. We're checking, first of all, what is the cost per lead? In this example, the cost per lead is $50, $500, what the cost of the campaign, and I got a cost per click is $50. $500 I spent, and I got 1,000 clicks, meaning 1,000 visits, out of which we got 100 registrations. So the cost per lead is $5. And out of these 100 registrations, we got 20 purchasing customers. So the cost per acquisition or cost per purchase is $25. We're also talking about click-through rate. What is the number from visits to leads? So it's 10%. From visits to purchases, or from registrations to purchases, which would be a better number, is 20%. From 100 registrations to 20 purchases. Now, the reason why these numbers are very, very important for the marketing department is this is what they're doing. As a bootstrap startup, the marketing budget is extremely important, and they need to optimize each and every one of these factors, and the overall costs, they need to make them less and get more quality customers. So marketing acquisition is an important part of the data that they need. Product usage. This is a new product. They would like to see page views, what the users are doing, how much time they're spending on each page, where are they clicking, session replays, heat maps. The difference between a session replay and heat map is simply that a session replay is for a specific user. Heat map gives me statistics about a specific page. Number 3 is basic KPIs. Sorry for this term, key performance indicators. So the basic KPIs are pretty obvious. How many new leads did we get today? How many new purchases? What is the average purchase amount? The numbers that show us that the product is growing and that everything seems to be okay. And if it's not, to check why. And the last thing that is related with their analytics requirements is the user journeys, track user journeys. We need to see over time what the users are doing, what to be able to do A/B variations on onboarding funnel, change one screen, make one screen in red and the same screen in blue for 2 different user groups, and see the effect on the onboarding funnel and see what's going on. And even more important, find correlation between features and purchases. Meaning I want to understand which of these product features is working and which of the product features is actually bringing me to the end goal, which is making more money. So after we considered all these, we came to the decision in the Relo Planner guys, we came to the decision that we're going to integrate Amplitude's free tier for 1 year. They don't expect their volume to require more than that at this stage. This should cover number 1, 2, and 4 from this list, meaning everything except the basic KPIs should be handled by Amplitude. The in-house dev team would handle number 3, the basic APIs, using simple and free data visualization tools and queries at this stage. And within 6 to 9 months, if everything goes as planned, of course, after all, we are talking about a startup, the data team would add Looker as a traditional enterprise BI tool. Any questions so far? Okay, I'll continue then. So the next question is why? And why comes to 3 main things. And for this, we're going to dive into Amplitude a bit. First of all, behavioral analytics. So time-based analytics. Okay. Time-based analytics is something that is part of the reason that we're using Amplitude. It's part of the solution. No extra development is needed in order to get to these things. So let me check an example. Okay. You can see this table, this chart. I hope you can.
Yes.
So this is an example of how a chart or analysis is done in Amplitude. This retention chart of users shows us users that have signed up on different weeks, and it visualizes how many of them have made a purchase in days 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay? Now, because this is the first time that we're looking at an Amplitude chart, I'll go over the structure of it. This is a retention chart, so it needs to have the following: a starting event. In this case, it's the user sign up. The return event, which indicates what is the retention. And in this case, I chose all purchases. And segment. So I decided to segment users that have signed up in the last 4 weeks, the week between September 7th and September 3rd, between September 14th and September 20th, and so on. And what this chart shows us, for example, if I'm focusing on the blue part, which is the first week, September 7th until September 13th. So from this segment of the users, we see that in day 0, meaning on the day of the sign up, 68% of these users also made a purchase, which makes sense, sounds good. If we move to day 4, we see that the number is decreasing, meaning after 4 days, not all 68% of the users that have made a purchase are also making a purchase on day 4. This is normal. This is a standard. This is our retention chart usually how it looks like. Meaning there are users, they're starting to use the system, and as time goes by, the numbers are decreasing a bit. The challenge of the product is, of course, to make this line as flat as possible and as high as possible. So what can we see from this chart? We can see that the first segment, we can see that, let's say, after 12 days, we see a 50% retention for the users that have signed up in the first week. But if we're looking at users from the last week, we see 34%. Meaning I can clearly see that there is a retention problem in the last for users that have signed up in the last week. Okay, this is something that requires further analysis in order to really understand what is the source of it. But I think this chart helps us demonstrate the power of Amplitude and how it does it. I'll just give an example in order to check it. Let's change the starting event from user sign up to the purchase, to the first purchase. Okay. In this case, we see that the chart looks a bit different. We see, for example, that on day 0, we see 100% retention. The reason is that the starting event and the return event are the same event. So of course it would be 100%. If I'm looking at day 1, day 2, we see that the number of users is dropping. So the behavior is a bit different because I changed the logic. But the important thing is for you to understand how simple it was. I didn't create any DIMs. I didn't make I didn't need any developer to make this change. This was all part of the deal when I was using Amplitude. Any questions so far? So another thing in this chart is that we have this in the bottom, which is something that is maybe you guys are more familiar with. This is a cohort table. It shows exactly the same data, but it shows this in a table, which of course I can export it and I can do various things to it. But there are other forms of visualization. Amplitude is a very, very powerful tool, and this is only the first report. We're just starting. Okay, let's look at another chart. This is a chart for either lifetime value or long-term value. And what this chart shows us, and I used exactly the same segments, and I ask to measure the average revenue per paying user. Okay, these are things that are built in Amplitude. And what this means that in this segment, I can see that after in day 0, I got 61% in average from every user. Okay, if I'm looking at day 15, sorry, I see that the average revenue per user is 835. The average revenue from other segments is a bit lower. Meaning in this case, I see something that is different from the previous chart. I see that while in the previous chart, I saw that the retention, the number of the returning users is lower, but here I see that the revenue from each average user is a bit higher. I'm not getting into conclusions, definitely not when I'm using Amplitude's test data. But the work of an analyst in Amplitude and what he does here is to try and check things from various angles and try to detect where is the anomaly, where the difference is coming from, and take it from there. Any questions so far? Why is this segment the last segment? As you can see, the segment where the sign up is between September 28th to October 4th. We see that this segment is cut short on day 16, meaning there is no data for day 17. The reason is that this segment is actually checking day 14 or day 15 for each of the users in this segment, meaning day 14 for the user that has signed up on October 4th, day 14 is October 18th. Day 14 for the user that signed up on October 1st, day 14 is October 15th, meaning Amplitude aligns all the users to be using exactly the same line. So, and this is something that is very powerful. Good luck doing it in Power BI. And I'll tell you a personal story. The reason I started working with Event Analytics platform is because of the frustration I had with doing exactly these analytics, time-based analytics, and comparing cohorts with traditional tools. It was very difficult there. It is very, very easy here. Okay, let's go back to the slide. If there are any questions, give me a bit. The next thing that is important in Amplitude is full user tracking. The analytics platform shows us each event that happened during the user's lifetime. Each event has properties, and we can see them all. So let's have a look. This is an example of a user timeline in Amplitude. This is a user, this is his user ID. There is also the Amplitude ID, which is a unique ID by Amplitude. I can see general details on the user. And let's look at the events that he had. He had a page view event. The page view event came from the website. I installed Amplitude SDK on the website. And every time the user is coming to a page, there is an event. I see what was the domain of the page, the location, the URL, the title, how much time is spent on the page. So I get this event, I got it from the page, from the website. Sign up and login, I got these events from the CRM. Install and login Android, I got these events from the mobile app. And push delivered and email delivered, these are events that I got from the marketing automation platform, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. So what we're seeing is that Amplitude actually connects all these events from all the different sources. It connects them into a single timeline, and based on this timeline, I can get to many insights. Now, let's look at one specific thing here in this screenshot. Inside the page view event, which is the first time that the user came to Amplitude, the user ID is missing. Meaning at this stage, the user was anonymous. He visited the site. He clicked an ad and went to the site. What happened is that Amplitude, after the sign-up event is sent from the CRM, but the sign-up event is sending the device ID that the user used in the web. Meaning the web and the CRM are connected. And when Amplitude sees that the same device was used for the user, it actually retroactively connects all the previous events of the same user to this timeline. Meaning I see the full history of the user, not from the moment he signed up, but from the moment he first came to the site. So if he clicked on 3 ads before getting to before actually registering, I can see the previous page views as well. And this is very valuable information. And this is what we're getting in Amplitude. This is how it's working. Let's look at another example of how things are working and test. So let's define marketing automation. OneSignal is a popular automation product, marketing automation product. It's integrating push notifications, emails, and many other forms of communication to customers. You define the messaging, you define who you want the messages to go to, and you do everything in OneSignal. So let's look, for example, how OneSignal lets you build and configure variants of a specific push notification. We're not going to be marketing automation experts at the end of this presentation, but I will be able to make a point here. So I defined a specific, I don't know how many of you guys are involved in finance, but gold is going up these days. So we sent 2 push notifications. And we decided to do a test to check if push notification with emojis is better than a push notification without emojis. So this is how I configure a push notification in OneSignal. I define the subject, I define the content, I decide that this will have 2 variants, variant A and variant B. And what OneSignal does, and this is out of the box from the marketing automation platform, it says define the 2 variants, define how many users you want these variants to be sent to. For example, 25%, although usually it's less. OneSignal then sends these 2. So for example, if the audience for this notification was 2,000 users, 250 got variant A, 250 got variant B. Then OneSignal checks out of those that I sent the push notification to, how many of them actually clicked. It sees that variant B had a better click-through rate, and then it tells me or suggests to me send variant B to the remaining users. So far, so good. This is what most marketing automation platforms offer, and this A/B testing is pretty good and makes sense. But in Amplitude, I can also measure the effect of the variance on the overall user behavior, okay, using a funnel report. So let's look at the funnel report. And this is what the funnel report in Amplitude looks like. It's another report. This report, I defined 3 events, and I wanted to check users that have made a single event, one of the events, how many of them have proceeded to do the next event, and how many of them proceeded to do the 3rd event. In this case, this is just an example. So I can see that out of the 100% that performed this specific event within 3 days, which is also something that I configured here, 89% did the 2nd event, and 71% continued to do the 3rd event. Again, this is a report that is built in Amplitude. Now, and this is how I can. This is a report that I built in Amplitude for specifically this specific push notification. So these are the push delivered, and these are the push clicked that we saw in OneSignal. And indeed, variant B has a higher conversion rate, click-through rate. And this makes sense so far. But since Amplitude has the full timeline, I can also see, okay, so these users clicked the push notification. But at the end of the day, I'm not after clicking on push notification. I want these users, because this was sent from an online trading platform, I want these users to trade. So I checked another thing. I checked the app open event, which is coming after the push click. And I see that still 4 of the users that have clicked and have actually opened the app. Still, variant B is winning. But here I see that we got 1 new trade, but this came from variant A. Meaning, if the end goal of this promotion is actually to encourage trading, we see that variant A is more successful. And this is data that I wasn't able to see in one signal, because one signal only has its limited scope. And when I see things in Amplitude, I'm able to get a much larger scope and be able to check things with long-term goals. So the right decision here, if of course, if the numbers are statistically significant, 1 click is not really, but the option to analyze things in Amplitude is much more much smarter and much more sophisticated than what you get from the marketing automation team. Any questions so far? Or I shall continue? Okay, so let's look at another example. And this is an impact analysis. Impact analysis is, I want to see the effect of a specific event on the user's purchasing pattern. And this is something that can be done like this. With the impact analysis chart, what I see is the first time I choose a treatment event and I choose the outcome event. The outcome event is what I want to measure and see the effect of the first time that each user did the treatment event. What we see here in the case of Amplitude's demo environment, which is a music application, when a user uses for the first time the feature of favorite song or video, we see, we can see visually that after he does it, the value, the average sum of the price of songs that he's buying is rising. And this is a good indicator. This means that we need to encourage users to use a specific feature, because this feature, we see a direct effect on the revenue of the company. This is pretty cool. This is not something that is very easy to do, or even it's very difficult to develop something like this with traditional BI tools. Let's look, for example, let's check another option. Let's choose an event like follow playlist, another feature of the system. And we see that while users that follow, we see a specific rise after they do it for the first time. This is not as significant statistically as we saw as the favorite, meaning this feature is cool, but maybe it's not good enough. It's not something that we should encourage that much. Let's go back to the favorite. And let's look, for example, let's segment only users that came from Japan. The same chart, but only for a specific segment. And we see that the numbers are different. Again, there is a difference, but there is a spike here. We need to understand what happened in this spike. Is it a single user? Is it more users? But definitely the difference between the 2 parts of the chart is not as significant as in all other countries. So one of the things that is very simple to do in Amplitude is really dissect the data, do different segments, change a few things in order to find where the issue is coming from, in order to find what is the best way for us to optimize the system. Okay. So again, the impact analysis is a great example of the power of event-based analytics. Let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure. So when Reload Planner started working, it started with the app and the CRM, and it doesn't really matter. Right now it's a web app, but if it's a mobile, it's more or less the same. And we see that there is a connection between them. Then we see website and landing pages. Leads are coming from the landing pages into the CRM. This is the normal flow of how things are working. Google Ads, Meta, and other web networks are sending leads into the landing pages, meaning the flow is I start a campaign in Google, I get clicks, the clicks go to the landing pages, and from the landing pages, they go to the CRM. The reason this arrow is bidirectional is that Google and Meta require data from the CRM and from the website on the success, meaning the fact that there were clicks is not enough for them. They want, in order to optimize the campaign, they also want to see how many of the users that they brought actually registered and how many of them have actually deposited. Another thing is the marketing automation, meaning at the end of the day, we have an app. The app needs to communicate with the users, and I'm doing it using one signal or Braze or many other. Find a message. I define a medium. Message, WhatsApp, whatever. We currently don't have it, but eventually Looker will go there. How Amplitude is working? Amplitude is simply integrated into almost every system. In many cases, the data is flowing inside Amplitude, meaning in each of these platforms, we install Amplitude SDK or another integration option, which sends events to Amplitude. In some cases, I can analyze things in Amplitude and everything is fine. But I can also use Amplitude in order to send data back to the relevant systems. For example, if we're talking about an ad network, which wants to understand, in order to optimize our campaigns, I want to make sure that I spend money on users which have a very, very high lifetime value. Lifetime value is calculated in Amplitude. So I can send from Amplitude, I can send back to the ad network directly, which were the users that gave the most value. And this is something that is very important in order to save money on marketing. Another example is from Amplitude, I can send to one signal segments of users based on behaviors. For example, users that haven't logged in for 7 days, or users that have logged in today for the first time after more than a month, or things like that. I can define these segments, I can synchronize them to one signal, and in one signal, I define push notifications and message journeys specifically to these users. Another option is synchronizing from Amplitude to the CRM. For example, in one of our clients, an online trading platform, it has a call center. In Amplitude, I can see, according to some analysis charts, I can see that some users are bound to churn, meaning someone needs to do something about them. We have integration to the CRM. We are triggering an alert to the call center, telling a call center agent, please give a call to this customer now and offer him this and that, a specific promotion, in order to make sure or to try and see if the user is about to churn or not. Again, something that is very powerful. So this is how it's working. This is an example of how actual events are working. So these are the events, some of the events that we define for a Reload Planner. This is the page view in the website. We can see that some of the events, like in the page view, we don't have a user ID. Other events, like in the registration, have a user ID. This is an event that is in one signal, push clicked. It tells me not only the user, it also tells me the message. So I can define different properties to each of the events, and the more sophisticated and the more thought went into the instrumentation of the events during the setup stage, the more valuable the configuration of the system and the option to do flexible reports would be. I'll give a negative example. In many cases, I saw that users are installing Amplitude, they're installing the Amplitude SDK, and they're sending a page view, a different page view event for each different page. Meaning the event type is not page view, the event type is page view registration, page view about us. Now, the other option, which is what we defined here, which is definitely the best practice, is use a single page view event, and as one of the properties, add the URL or the page name or the page title. When you're doing this, your level of flexibility when you're building funnel reports and other things is much higher. Okay, so at this stage, some of you may be wondering, some of you Power BI guys may be wondering, were we wrong all this time? So the answer is no, definitely not. Let's take an example request from an imaginary requirement from a Relo Planner's CMO who would like to show a specific push notification to users that visit the transportation page in more than 75% of their sessions of the site. Now, while this seems pretty simple according to what I showed before, actually such aggregations are pretty difficult and sometimes they are impossible to achieve when we're talking about event-based analytics. The platform is simply not built for it. So it is best practice to do such aggregations and other aggregations, to do them in the Power BI or in the Looker or wherever, and synchronize them regularly to Amplitude. The two platforms, Looker and Amplitude, they are not competing, they are complementing. What you're getting from Amplitude, you are not getting in Power BI in Looker, and what you're getting in Looker, you're not getting there. If you have very sophisticated churn models that are based on many calculations, it is practically impossible to do them in Amplitude, do them in Looker, in Power BI. The power of this platform is still there. So we need both of them at the end of the day. And last, we have a few minutes where I would like to dive into a specific area where you see the power of power of event-based analytics. So there is a feedback loop, and we discussed it a little earlier. We synchronize behavioral cohorts. Let me show you how I define cohorts in Amplitude. And this is an example of a cohort, again, in Amplitude's demo environment, returning Swifty customers after a week of inactivity. Those of you that don't have teenage girls, those are fans of Taylor Swift. So the definition of this cohort is users that have played a song or video where the genre is pop in the last 0 days, meaning today. They did not play a song, any song, in the last 7 days, not including today. This is the offset. They did play a song in the last 30 days, and they did make a purchase. Okay? Just an example of a segment that is based on behavior. I can then click target and synchronize this segment every hour, every day, or online to one signal or to another marketing automation. Okay, so this is the way to the first part of the feedback loop. Behavioral cohorts are synchronized from Amplitude to one signal. One signal sends back the results of the marketing activity, and then we can go to panel analysis, which we saw earlier, and see what the effect was, and maybe we should make a change, either in the push notification or in the messaging, or maybe in the cohorts. Maybe you can do the same campaign for 2 different cohorts and see which one is more successful. And this is what the marketing automation guys are constantly doing. They change a little bit the cohorts, they change a little bit the messaging, and this is an iterative process that is meant at the end of the day to continually optimize the system. This is how Amplitude is doing. And the last thing I would like to mention is that Amplitude, in about a week, they're about to introduce AI agents, which are doing exactly this, meaning you define a specific goal, like, for example, optimize the site or optimize the click-through rate of the site from visits to registration, or optimize a specific campaign. And the AI agent is, when you're giving it enough parameters and enough and the right toolkit, it is meant to do exactly this: optimize the messaging, optimize the segments in order to eventually improve the final goal. So I don't know if it would work as well as it works in the presentations, but it is definitely something that I'm looking forward to. And that's about it. Any questions?
Hey, Avi.
Hi, Elan. How are you?
Good, good. One question. Most of the startups and companies usually are not aware of behavior analytics, and what they do are aware of is Google Analytics. What can you say to them? Start with this and then go back to here, or like what are the key factors when you choose this kind of tool?
Google Analytics is a great tool. Yeah. Google Analytics is anonymous, meaning you cannot track users. You cannot track specific users. It's simply not built for that. Google Analytics is meant to do statistical optimization, meaning you can optimize a specific page according to all the visits to that page, maybe according to rough segments like country or things like that. But when we want to track users and track them in all the systems, another
the question and answer, maar ik heb
it's not meant for me, I guess. So anyway, Elon, Google Analytics is a great tool, but it is meant for one specific thing. If you want to get the full Monty and be able to do the thing that I showed here with the marketing automation and other advanced things, you need something else. You need Amplitude or a Mixpanel. And I agree with you that many startups are not aware of it. And I'll go back to one thing that I didn't mention here in this slide. And this is something that is very important. When I check the funnel report for A/B testing of the marketing automation, I can do the same thing with exactly the same mechanism for testing product features and software builds. Meaning in Amplitude, there is a feature called Amplitude Experiments, and I can tag specific users with specific builds and expose specific features to these guys, and I can track statistically whether they're using a specific feature or not, and then come to conclusions, meaning the same thing that we did for marketing automation and optimizing messaging to customers, I can do for improving the product. This is a huge advantage for startups, which actually, this is what they're after. Interviews with customers and getting feedbacks and ratings in the app stores are great, but when you can actually look at the actions and compare things, I think this is invaluable information. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you, Avi. Great having you here. And everyone, see you in the next meetup.